Maze from Virginia Beach, Virginia. Maze the Great. I read a transcript of an interview MVP did where he took another shot at Triple H, saying you can go down the list and you can think of talents that Undertaker worked with that he elevated and got them over. How many people do you remember the nose, Triple H, getting over in his career? How many people can you associate with him? So he's asking, who do you think comes to mind as far as talents that Triple H put over and elevated? I think it's fair to say Seth Rollins. Yes, he was already over with the Shield, but under the Authority, he became a true main eventer in the company. Well, Rollins was headed there regardless, but sure, you can throw him on there. The first one and the biggest name that comes to mind, though, is Batista. Batista is number one. Batista was obviously one of the people who was handpicked by Triple H to be a part of Evolution in the first place. They built a very good story with him heading into WrestleMania in 2005. He put him over at WrestleMania, and then he put him over 2 more pay-per-views. 3 in a row, with their Hell in a Cell match being the best of the bunch. And that's it. That's all I can really give him credit for. I'm sorry. He put over lots of people, but that's very different than like truly elevating them to a level above and beyond what they had been doing. He put over Daniel Bryan, who was already super over, right? I guess that would be the closest one, because the Authority story is what led to him winning the world title at WrestleMania, even though, again, that was never supposed to happen. But Bryan was already super over. He put over Roman Reigns, who was already on the ascent. And they had a terrible WrestleMania match that did nothing to truly elevate the guy. In fact, as I recall, I'm trying to remember because I was in the fucking building, the fans spent most of the match booing Roman. And I don't even agree with MVP giving him Randy Orton. Mick Foley did more to truly elevate Randy Orton in the eyes of the fans than Triple H ever did in any of their matches. I would even say Undertaker to an extent. That was sort of where the healing began after what happened to Orton in 2004 after he lost the World Heavyweight title. Now Triple H handpicked him for Evolution, but that doesn't mean he elevated him and got him over. He did with Batista. He did not do that the same way with Randy Orton. Randy Orton won the world title, and then Triple H beat him for it like a month later. They had a WrestleMania match years later that Triple H won and did nothing to elevate Randy Orton. I'm not giving him credit for that one. I think MVP is actually being very generous with that one. Losing a match to someone in and of itself does not constitute getting them over. Like he tapped out to John Cena at WrestleMania 22. That was a big one. And same thing with Benoit. Tapped out to Benoit in that triple threat of WrestleMania 20. So if you want to make an argument for either one of them, fine. But my point is, it's not a long list. Now, that being said, MVP talks a lot of shit about this man, but he never comes right out and says what it is that he did to him to make him so upset. All he has said in the past is that it has nothing to do with race. It has to do with his personal experiences with the man. It would be nice to hear him explain what those are, or were. From Detroit. Greetings, Solomonster. I wanted to get your opinion on the original DX return that happened on the Raw After Vengeance in 2002, which led to Triple H turning on Shawn Michaels in the beginning of their epic rivalry from 2002 to 2004. But in an alternate universe, how would you have booked the reformation of DX in 2002 had they actually stayed together before the eventual split? And then he goes into some potential scenarios here. Look, I think that you could have kept them together for 6 months or maybe a little bit longer. You could have had them get a run back then as tag team champions and then ultimately built to the exact same thing you ended up doing. It just sort of pushes the timeline back a little bit. But that maybe is the only change I would have made. The DX return in 2002 when Shawn first came back to the company would have made sense. I was not a fan of when they brought it back in 2006. And it was just very goofy. I think the only time I truly was entertained and I truly laughed during that entire thing is when Vince was in the ring on the mic and they turned up like the pitch of his voice. and he sounded like he had just inhaled a bunch of helium. I laughed at that. I think that might be the only time I laughed. I mean, I know they did Little People's Court. That was kind of amusing, I guess, years later, but I just wasn't a big fan of '06 or '09, when they did the DX stuff, and it was just a marketing grab, so they could sell a bunch of fucking glow sticks. And, and now at this point, they're so much older and they're doing all the same juvenile shit they were doing in their younger days. It was sad. I couldn't get into it. But in '02, you could have dragged it out for a little while, and you still could have ended up in the same exact place, where you would have had Shawn get a short world title run, and they could have had some big matches, and everything else plays out exactly the same way. But instead of blowing it off in one night, you do it maybe for maybe not even 6 months, but you do it for a few months.